Overlays, transitions, text, stock photos, all of that is going to go on today in our tutorial for Flixier, which if you haven't watched the first one, that shows you the basics. But this series, which is sponsored by Flixier, goes over how to use this video editing software that's cloud-based, which means you can access it in any computer that you use. So if you haven't watched that first video, you can do so if you need the basics tutorial. But if not, let's dive in and talk about how to make your video lessons a bit more visually engaging. There is a free account if you want to try it out. I'll go ahead and link that below. So the first tutorial basically had, how to import and how to do, very simple editing of a video using Flixier. So today we're talking about adding some overlays basically to your video to make it a bit more visually engaging for your students. So for example here, I'm going to go ahead, let's take this one to use as our example, and you go ahead and add it to the tracks. Okay. Now, of course, you'd want to edit it down as you need to for your particular video. So, for example, getting rid of the blank spaces, right? But let's say that this particular video has been edited to be ready to go for your students, but you want to make it more visually engaging. So what are your options here? So let's say I'm introducing the lesson that they'll be going over today, and we're talking about important literary analysis terms, right? And right here is when I say important literary analysis terms, right? That's this portion of this video. So you want to emphasize this. How can you do so? One thing you can do is on the left here, click text, and there's some templates you can use here, or you can add simple text as well. So first, let's say I'm going to use this template, and I click and drag it to right where I start saying important literary analysis terms. And so when that plays, you see that's how it appears. So you click into it, we're going to make it bigger, we're going to move it around, right? And then down here, we're going to say edit animation. And so we have important literary terms. Oh, so now you see it's too long for the actual template. So let's say important terms. Okay, keep it simpler. Now you can go ahead and click here to edit the font, for example, to make sure it's easy for your students to read. So let's say you like that one. Go ahead and click done. If you want to, you can also change the color of the shape. As you notice, it actually has two colors, the solid one and the less solid one, right? But I'm going to keep it red because it works out well. And now click Save Animation, and now it's been switched. So when I say important literary terms, this will pop up on the screen. Okay, so that's an example of the template. Because they're templates, you can't make them longer, right? So this one will be 4 seconds, but if you want to, let's say it's just one word that you want to appear and disappear quickly, you can go ahead and click in and click S and then delete the portion that you don't need. So that is a way of shortening the templates if you want to, but you can't make them longer than they already are. Okay, so this is one way of adding text using the templates. Now, maybe instead, you want to use the simple text, right? So you're saying important literary terms, and the first term you're talking about here is going to be metafiction, okay? So it's the first term is, and then you're going to say metafiction right here. So again, add simple text this time, and it pops up. You notice it pops up in the above track. If you want to, you can drag it down to make it easier to see, right? And so when it plays, you see it there. So we're going to go ahead and move it to make it somewhere where it's easy to see, make it bigger, and then type into it metafiction, okay? And so again, click in and move it around so it's easy to see. Now, if you want to, you can go to text properties and you can change the color, the font, the size. Do you want to italicize it? So there are options here for it. But on my background, it works really well to be in white right there. And so if you want to, again, click in. In this case, since it's something you created, you can make it as long or as short as you want, however long you want it to appear on the screen. Okay. So in that case, now it pops up to the length that you want it to be. And then it disappears once the track ends. Okay, so these are two ways of adding text to emphasize a point that you're making. Now, what's very cool is, let's say you have here metafiction, right? So I'm going to click in, I'm going to make it smaller, right? Move it up here, and then add simple text again, and move it maybe slightly afterward, but it will end at the same point in time. And so for this one, move it here. You'll actually add the definition of the term. So when it plays, you have metafiction, definition, right? So you can do the whatever timing you want. Maybe you want it to happen at the same time as metafiction. Maybe you want it to happen a little bit afterward and make metafiction stay on there longer, right? And so now you've created multiple tracks here, which we'll get more into that in the next tutorial, but you have them appearing on the screen in the timing that you want. And so your students have not just the word, but also definition on the screen as you're saying it potentially verbally, right? And so you can have as much text as you want. You just keep adding more and more. And notice that whatever track is at the top is what will appear on the screen. So for example, let's say you went in here and I move this to be over it, right? If I clicked here and I moved up metafiction, though you can't really tell very easily, let's change the color, right? So as you can tell here, metafiction is on top of definition. But if I moved it back down, now it's behind it. So whatever is the highest track will be the one that appears on top. Okay, so of course, obviously, you just need to move it around so that it doesn't clash in that way. And again, we'll talk more about adding tracks in the third tutorial, because you can actually do this with multiple videos at once or multiple images at once to make a more dynamic video as well. But this is adding text, so that's one option for you. Let's keep on going here and turn on the blank portion of the screen, right? And so what else can you do? Well, let's say, all right, in between, let's go ahead here. All right, so maybe this is a transition in between different ideas, right? So first you're talking about terms, and then you're talking about how to, apply the terms to a certain portion of the class activity. So maybe you had them do a reading for homework, and so now you had, all right, metafiction, here's the definition. Now let's talk about how it applies to this book that you read for homework. So down here, I'm going to go ahead and click in, and I'm going to click S, just to make sure that I know very clearly that we're moving from one idea to the next, right? But if you're seeing here, it's just me talking, right? And so if you want to make that clear, you can add a transition. So when you go here on the left to transitions, you can see all these various types, and you can decide which one you want to try out and see how it looks on the screen. So for example, let's do dreamy, right? So we're going to go ahead and add dreamy to this second clip, right? Now, if you notice the transition, you can make it shorter or longer. So let's say we make it as short as possible, which is right there. When you click, that's how the transition looks. Or you can go here and make it longer. And now when you click, it's a much slower transition, right? So you can decide how short or how long you want the transition to be. Now you notice I made mine very short because I start talking soon after the clip I made, right? The cut I made between the two images. So I want to make sure that the transition ends by the time I start speaking. Okay, so now when you click into it, right, you have, as you notice here, I've added a transition to this, right? And so you can say, all right, well, I tried dreaming, it's all right. I want to try burn now. And so you go ahead and you go over and you watch, that was burn. Okay, not a big fan, click back in. And so you can try as many as you like. As you can see, there's many transitions here. And then you decide, all right, this is what I like. This is the length I like the transition to be. Now let's say the clip ends right here, right? So now you can say a transition out, right? And so when the clip ends, I want it to blur out. And again, you can decide how long or how short that lasts. And so now you have both the beginning and the end of the clip has a transition in and out of it. So that's how you add a transition to a particular clip. And if you want to, it's up to you to decide. So maybe you like the transition in, but you don't want to transition out. You can just click that little trash can. Or maybe decide, you know what, I don't need transitions here. Let's get rid of both. And so now both of them are gone. Okay, so that's how you add a simple transition to a clip so that you can have, hey, here's a new portion of my lesson. You can see it visually because I've added a transition. Now, something to consider, if you go up to overlays, these have like what I would consider transitions as well, but they're a bit more fancy, right? Is what I'd say. So let's say you click and drag this one, it's its own track, right? So maybe I have it right here and I want to shorten it to be, in that space where I'm not talking. And so now you play it and this is how that transition looks, right? And so it's, again, a bit more visually stimulating, so you can definitely see the change in topic. Let's delete that and click, let's say this one. All right, and so now you see that. And again, it's just different transitions that are a bit more visual, a bit more colorful that you might really like. So you can look through them and see, okay, I want to add this one in particular. So those are overlays. All right, and so you can just do a simple transition or you can do an overlay depending on what you'd like. And again, if you wanted to shorten these, you could. You can't really lengthen them because they are templates. As an aside, I know the focus here is on teachers, but this motion one, if you're wondering what that is, that's more for people who are creating content for social media purposes. So for example, if you add, this, then it's, in this case, it's a subscribe and like button that you see me use. So that this is more if you actually have, a Facebook Live you're doing, or if you're creating content for these types of things. So you can see here, these overlays and see if they apply to you if you are doing something that's more for, your brand versus a video lesson. So just a quick tip there. Now we'll be going over this in more detail in my next tutorial, but I do want to at least briefly mention here so you can get started on it. There are options for adding media on top of media, right? So as you saw here, adding text in this case, adding overlays. You can also add one image on top of a video. So for example, in your library, you have this video going, and let's say, in my case, so if I'm talking about the HyFlex activities collection that I have available, right? So I'm saying that in the video, then I want the actual cover of the collection to appear. And so I can just go ahead and add that, and I can say, how big do I want it? Where do I want it to appear on the screen? How long do I want it to appear on the screen? So you can add more than one media to a video, right? And again, whatever track is on top will appear above the track below it, okay? So you do want to move it around in order for it to appear, at the proper place on the screen, okay? So as you see here, I'm talking, and now I have this pop up. So you can do that with images. You can also do that with videos, have one on top of the other. And again, we'll go over that in detail next week. But it is an option for you if you say, for example, let's talk about the importance of reading. So you can have a book appear on here as well. So if I delete that, and maybe go to the stock images, and I say, book. Now I'm looking for an image. Okay, and so now here, I'll grab this one. And now I'm talking about the importance of children reading at a young age. And so you see an image of a boy reading. So you can also add that as well to make your videos more visually engaging. So you can use the stock library, or you can use images that you import into your library that's more personal to you. You can do the same with the shapes here. You can look through. So maybe again, the importance of reading. So you add, a book. Right, and so you can go ahead and move that around. And if you want to go ahead and save color here, nope. So if you edit the SVG and you click on it and you say, I want it to be this color. So you can just go around and change the whole thing to be a different color. Okay, and now you have that saved, so it's easier to see there, and you can move it around however you'd like. So you do have shapes here as a possibility, along with images or videos from the stock library or the ones you download and import yourself. If you found the video helpful, click that like button, and I'll see you next time in 2 weeks with how to actually create multiple tracks in one video so you can have more complex videos for your students to learn from.